Hello and welcome to First Movers in Conversation. I'm Yasmin London
I'm Cassie Roma.
and we're here to talk about all of the stories and strategies of the world's first movers so that you can become one too. Cass, tell us what we're talking about today.
Ooh, she's a juicy one. She's a juicy one. And to say I'm a little hot under the collar talking about it, but also very excited is an understatement. So today we're going to be talking about the WNBA, but not just the WNBA. We're going to be talking about dildo throwing in public.
Did you ever think that we would say those words out loud on this podcast, our second? But we're already into it. Dildo throwing. Tell me more.
I mean, we had to start with a bang. Sorry. Sorry. Well, it's been one of those things where you can't miss the headlines around this. So the WNBA, its popularity, viewership, sponsorship for players, all of the, sold out crowds. It's just the fandom is huge, and the WNBA is having its time right now.
Yeah.
And within that, over the past week, there have been 3 incidents in which men have taken bright green dildos with a cryptocurrency Bitcoin logo on it and hurled them onto courts during live games while the women are playing their games. And twice a player has actually been hit by these. And, you can look at it and some pundits will say that it's just random internet chaos, right? But it's really a textbook example of how, like, when women reach this visibility and have influence at scale, there's this backlash. There's something that needs to happen to demean or belittle, sexualize or undermine them. And although the perpetrators have said that, this is just a prank and they'll choose other ways of doing this, let's be real, it's not just a prank. So today I'd like to talk to the pattern behind the prank, then go into why this is more than a stunt, look at the cultural through lines, and then kind of just talk about what's at stake. And then really kind of delve into that first mover's mindset of what we need to do to be the first person to move on changes in these kinds of situations.
100%. I mean, look, when a player steps onto the court, she's there to compete, just like the guys are. We were joking when we first talked about this about LeBron. Imagine if somebody threw a dildo at LeBron James. Like, just would never happen, right? And it's not women's jobs to sort of dodge these cheap stunts for fan engagement or whatever the kind of philosophy was behind it. Ultimately, this was really about power. It was about disrespect when it comes to women in sport. And it's about really undermining the professionalism of these women playing these sorts of sports. We know that the more that women become successful, the more that this can fire up the misogyny that kind of underpins that foundation. And it's just not okay. This isn't harmless. It's sexualized disruption. This is disruption to the game. It's impacting their well-being, their safety. I know that many of the players as well, like Nelly, stepped on these dildos all over the court. And, let's say one of them rolls their ankle, breaks their ankle. This is not just a harmless stunt. People need to think a lot more about the impacts on a number of different levels, don't they?
Oh, you said so many brilliant things there, but I think the one that really stuck with me at the end was people need to think.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things where when we look at the pattern of this kind of thing that happens, especially with women, whether it's sports, whether they're in politics, leadership, whatever that looks like, it's kind of sexualization as distraction, right? And reducing a female athlete or public figure to objects of sexual humor. And like, I love a good "that's what she said" joke, but usually at my own expense and usually not at the right time. But, it's this dichotomy between saying, I'm going to sexualize this person as humor. But when you do that, there's no acknowledgement of the inherent skill, strategy, athleticism, professionalism, and all of the things that these women encapsulate right now. And not to mention, like, I think of my 10-year-old daughter and her best friends who love the WNBA. Like they live and breathe this. We
Yeah.
went to California recently, and my daughter got a Sabrina sweatshirt, and the second she showed up in that around her friends, the screaming, the oh my God, that's
How good.
amazing. So this goes
The role
beyond.
modeling of that, like,
Yeah.
I love that too. I mean, I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. They are mad Tilly's fans, soccer fans.
Yeah.
And, we do have to think exactly as you mentioned, what is the knock-on impact of the throwing of a dildo onto a court? What does that show, young girls or young boys about what is appropriate and respectful and good sportsmanship? I mean, on a base level, don't we want to be teaching our kids the basics around good sportsmanship and respectful behavior and what it takes, I guess, to get to that particular level? And we want more girls in sport in particular. I know you and I are massive advocates for that because we know what sport's done for both of our own lives. And if we have these scenarios where young kids, young girls are getting wind of this as behavior that isn't really called out, there's not enough discussion about this. There's not enough condemning of this sort of behavior by the leagues or the organizations supporting their players as well. Then the only option to think about is that it's tolerated. And that's just not okay, is it?
That's right. What's tolerated will continue. And I think it even goes beyond. I think so far the WNBA has done a pretty damn good job from a cultural level at the top to the
Yeah.
players to the management being able to speak their minds and say, no, this is not good enough. But it's endemic. It goes beyond even that. So the reach and the tentacles of young girls or any women seeing this, it goes back to the silencing effect and choosing to step back, choosing to not be in the limelight, because if this is okay behavior, then why do it? And
Exactly.
where are the media pundits? Where are the biggest voices in media? Where are the biggest personalities, the male allies, in saying this is bull?
Yeah,
No, we won't stand for this.
100%. You're so right with the male allies. Like, I think there's a lot of conversation around men feeling quite targeted by the feminist and feminism movement at the moment and not really knowing how to show their support. This is a moment, like this moment, calling it out, sharing your views, saying that this isn't okay. This isn't the right behavior of a respectable professional athlete or group of athletes, that the boys need to come out and back the girls in these sorts of scenarios, because often, as much as I hate to say it, their voices can be much more influential. Boys will listen to boys or men, and we know that, of course, the person that has accepted responsibility or claimed responsibility, interesting dynamic, different words, but claimed responsibility is a young male, 18 to 20 years old, I believe he is. And, there's been this sort of discussion around the reasoning that he did that, or that he started this kind of scenario happening.
And the irony of it.
Oh,
the irony of it.
And we're back to think about what the knock-on effect is of your behavior, even if your intent is good. That benchmark's so low. I think that's what frustrates me, is this benchmark of thinking of what could happen, of going, oh, I didn't mean that to happen. Like, I meant well. Like, that benchmark in 2025 is so low. It needs to raise. We need to think beyond our own actions as to what the consequences of those actions could be.
Yeah, which dives into the kind of why this is more than a stunt. And I think we should probably explain why this young man and the young men involved said they did it. And it was to come up against this bro culture of Bitcoins and meme coins and kind of show a better quote unquote way to kind of market themselves. But when you come into it, the irony of that is that nobody put any thought into, or maybe they did, what this would look like throwing dildos at women. They basically just said, we did it because there is so much visibility. There are so many eyeballs. It's more impactful than any other strategy. And it's, that's guerrilla marketing. But at the same time, what you see when you said the benchmark is low, I've been looking over the last 2 days, and the monetary value of the dildo Bitcoin, the meme coin, has gone up by millions.
God.
So what they did is being not only celebrated, but people are putting their money there and
Yeah.
going, we kind of like this. Look at that. And you just go,
God. What does that say about society?
we have to think harder and deeper and have these conversations
Mm.
at dinner tables, in boardrooms, in businesses, and bring in other stories like this into context,
Yeah.
that maybe it doesn't fit. Like, talk about it at the bank you
Mm.
work at. Talk
Yeah.
about it in other contexts,
Yeah.
because the messages it says, like, no matter how skilled you are, we can reduce you to a punchline, and
Totally.
that's not okay.
Totally.
That's not okay.
And I think, when you talk about having these conversations in workplaces, it's so important to contextualize it too, because can you just imagine, just for a moment, you go to, a corporate office and you go sit in a boardroom and somebody just whips out a bright green dildo and throws it on the table. Like, what would the reaction be to that? You'd have HR like right in there. You'd potentially have people losing their jobs, certainly being asked to leave, certainly talked about the fact that this is not a professional way to behave in a workplace. Like, I think it sort of speaks as well to what's acceptable in the workplace of
Mm-hmm.
sport. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
I guess, I do take what you're saying about, the WNBA doing a lot to try and support women here. But what's missing where fans think that they can come in and do this? And what's the outcome? I hope that he's been banned. Do we know who he is? Has he been given a lifetime ban? Like, what's been the consequence of that? Because I think we can come out and denounce it, of course, and that's expected. But what is that next step that's being taken to make sure this doesn't happen again? I'm sure there's many steps, but what are they? And the important thing, I guess, is sharing what steps are being taken where you can, so that people understand that this is being taken seriously and this isn't just going to, evacuate the news cycle within the next 24 hours and we all move on. So I'd like to see what that outcome is. And if there is a lot being done about it, then shout it from the rooftops, help other sports learn, help other organizations make sure that this doesn't happen for them. Because what we talk a lot about at First Movers is shaping the environments that we're in for the betterment of the world. So sharing that knowledge, telling the story, visibility around actions, all of that is just gold to make sure that the greater public, wider public knows that this just isn't acceptable, and it really diminishes the power of that.
I think you are spot on. It's understanding, especially at these larger, whether it's a sporting organization or whatever the organization looks like, it is understanding not only what the consequences for someone who does something like this will be, but what's the process you're taking.
Mm-hmm.
How are you, like, not only how are you supporting the people who had this done to them, but what are the processes? You're right, so that we know people aren't going to be just let, excuse the turn of phrase, willy-nilly in to be able to throw
I love it.
sex toys at women.
It.
Like, what becomes the different impact at security? What becomes you're right, or you're banned for life. I mean, there'll be people like that are like, we don't care, we'll get banned for life and still do it. Well, but what is the knock-on effect of that? Then does the NBA say, no, we stand with the WNBA, so if you get kicked out of this game for that, you can't come to an NBA game? And then does the NFL do that? Do all of those American organizations come together and say, that's it, you're done with sports, you demean any of the players, you put anybody in that kind of horrible place, you're gone. That's
exactly.
It. You lose
Zero
the right
tolerance.
Zero
tolerance. And imagine the knock-on effect of that. Like, that's where the power is, Cass. Like, you have one sport, then another one backing them up, then another one, another. Suddenly these people are going, well, sport's actually a really important part of my life, so I'm going to think again. Again.
At a contextual level, whether it's like FIFA, whether it's rugby, whatever it looks like, sport, I'm so passionate about this. I know you are too. Sport is one of those things that can bring people together, teach us leadership skills, how to collaborate, how to be creative on the field of play, how to be strategic. But more importantly, sport is a reflection of society. When sport shifts, culture shifts. It's like I talk to my partner about this all the time. In ancient Rome, it was circuses and bread. So people need to be fed and entertained. Sport is our circuses now. Sport is how we feel
Yeah.
entertained. We come together in community. So what is the community ethos now?
Yeah.
What is the sporting community going to do to come together and say, no, this isn't okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I was at an event not so long ago called Sports Matters, and there was a fantastic presentation from the head of APAC at Under Armour, and he quoted Nelson Mandela in saying that sport has the power to change the world.
Yeah.
And no truer words have been spoken, because sport really does have that unifying power and magic. It has that ability to inspire, to connect people, to be inclusive, to elevate people's awareness, to create diversity, unification as countries, even if we are sort of battling against each other. It
Sportsmanship,
really,
fair play,
exactly,
equity,
all the
all of it.
lessons. All the
Yeah.
lessons that we learn, grit, resilience, determination, like it is a magical aspect of our lives. It's why people love it so much. It's why brands will spend millions and millions of dollars getting behind the right teams who represent the right things for them. So you're 100% right. What could this mean if there was a challenge that was a zero tolerance approach to this, the protection of the athletes, of making sure that they're treated with the respect that they deserve, that this is actually a job. This isn't just a bit of fun. These people do this for a living. Therefore, it is a workplace. Therefore, it should be protected as such. And I think one of the other really interesting things about this is when we have that sort of integration of this discussion of crypto and coins, it really is just another example for me of that connection between the online and offline world. And we talk about this a lot, right? The digital world and the impact, particularly on women and girls, but all intersectional minority groups. And the fact that it, disproportionately targets those people, especially if they are high profile and public facing. And this is a perfect example of an online stunt becoming a real world problem and danger and well-being concern. And so again, these online environments, what do they represent? How are they being moderated and regulated? And what impact are they having on physical environments for our society?
Yeah. I mean, wow. Well, you and I talk about that all the time. It's huge. The knock-on effect of what happens on our phone screens when we're surfing the internet, whatever it looks like, YouTube, TV, whatever the multimedia experiences of our world, when we take that into the real world without the parameters, without knowing what the process is after this, then it almost feels like open season to allow misogyny, allow these kinds of things to continue in a world where we know better.
Yeah,
we know
totally
better. So we must do better. And for me, that's where the heart of the first movers ethos comes in. How do we shape this? What are ways in which each of us can walk into our lives, whether we are at home being the badass mama who's taking care of the kids, whether we are in a corporate CEO position, whether we are an athlete, whether we're in a sporting organization, whatever that looks like, what is the thing we can do to shape this environment, to speak up, to have these conversations? And, it's not easy. A lot of my career, I've been in mostly tech, innovation, and male spaces. And it's not easy to be a lone female voice at a table saying, actually, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And we need to talk about it. It's really important that we talk about it.
Exactly. It's
but
so important.
easy isn't the way to move, is it?
No, I think, look, we've got to choose to challenge. And I guess that's one of those innate behavioral traits of a first mover. And what I love about that, though, is that it can be a learned behavior as well. It can be a reflex. It makes me think of the pillar that we talk about in first movers of shaking up the status quo. Like, how can we challenge those scenarios, those patterns of behavior that no longer serve us in our lives, in our organizations, in our society. And I think this is a perfect example of that, right? This 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, I mean, women's basketball probably wasn't a thing at that time, but that might have been okay. Now it's not. We know better. We have more information. We know that this has to change. So what can we actually do to shake up the status quo? And I think it does go back to understanding what's within our individual capabilities and control. So it could be, for example, as a male ally, calling out that behavior, knowing the power of your platform, and that you sharing this and your thoughts around it and supporting your fellow female athletes. That holds power. If you're the CEO or you're the head of HR or people and culture of the organization, what can you do to shake the status quo? What's different? How can we refuse to repeat patterns of behavior that no longer serve us?
Ooh, so it might refuse to repeat. Ooh.
Refuse to repeat it, because that's what it is.
Over and over, say that again. Refuse to repeat.
Refuse to repeat. And that doesn't mean, I often say this in presentations, and I really need to always say, this doesn't mean throwing the rule book out entirely. It doesn't mean changing everything up or being extreme, but it's about really challenging what is and what isn't working anymore. And so if we have a situation like this where fans are able to get into the stadiums with this sort of paraphernalia and get close enough to get it onto a court, what's going to change? What can we do to make sure that that doesn't happen again? And then I really do believe strongly in that zero tolerance approach and that comradeship, because when we have a clear line in the sand with no ambiguity, people will cross it, but they will not cross it for long when that consequence is there. You know, it's the same thing with parenting, right? If you show weakness or ambiguity in your decisions, if you come up with a maybe instead of a no, you can't have that for dinner, then people will push it and they'll always think there's a chance. But that zero tolerance approach when it comes to respect and platforming of these athletes and providing an environment where they can perform at their absolute best, which is what everybody wants, I think that's a really reasonable approach, something that can change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes shaking up the status quo, like you said, depending on your circle of influence or what you can control, it's asking why, or saying, you know, what could we do better next time? Or it's speaking up when your voice shakes. That sometimes the smallest moment has the biggest ripple impact, because when we think about these things and we look at the cultural through lines, you know, you and I talk about this a lot, whether it's women journalists and they're being groped on TV or interrupted with comments, politicians being reduced to comments about their looks instead of, you know, their character, and then CEOs and leaders, 1 in 4 don't even want, women don't want to step into a leadership role that's public because they just would rather
abuse.
not deal with the abuse. And I know both of us have dealt with that. I've dealt with everything from death threats all the way through to stalkers and just random men on the internet, probably Bubba in his mama's basement, telling me I should die. And you're just like, because why?
Why?
And this is reinforced not only by algorithms but by media. So as far as the WNBA is concerned, like, can we stop showing the dildos? Can we not put the logo on TV? Can we not mention the name of the brand? Can we not platform them in the way that they wanted and instead platform the women?
Exactly.
And say, no, this is our zero tolerance policy. We're not going to show you that. You know, and strange.
And therefore, sorry to interrupt, ensure that the outcome they were actually chasing isn't obtained. But the reality is this crypto has gone through the roof. Mission accomplished.
And that goes back to the crypto, like, boy dude culture, you know, dude bro culture that is so wildly misogynistic now, that is so I hate to use a name, but Joe Rogan-esque. And I just think there's better ways in which media can perform and be allies and platform than what has been happening now. But I want to also give all of our love and support and just a big, like, weehaw to the players who've stood up for
Yeah.
themselves, who've not only spoken to cameras, but tweeted
Mm.
about it and said,
Mhm.
no, this is not
Yeah.
okay, to the coaches who've done that.
Yeah.
But it should, you're right. You're completely 100% right in what you said earlier. It shouldn't be on the player and the coach to do that. It shouldn't
No.
have happened in the first place. It did, but
No.
now there should be the process that
Exactly.
wraps itself around them so that they have safety, respect, and that their professionalism is seen, because the amount of hours these women put in, they dedicate their
Mm.
lives to their sport, and then what
Yeah.
they do to lift the WNBA. Without the players, there's no WNBA. Without
No,
the
that's exactly
personalities,
it.
there's no sponsorship. Without any of this, there's no fandom. So
Yeah.
they need to take care of the actual humans, or they have
Mhm.
nothing.
For sure. I mean, look, there's legal ramifications for this as well. You know, if we were looking at this in Australia, there are safe work standards, right?
Mhm.
So we have requirements in this country, and I'm sure New Zealand is the same. United States, maybe anything goes. It might be a little bit different. However, if we're looking in our own backyards, there is a requirement upon workplaces to create safe psychosocial environments that
Yep.
also, as I always say this, include impacts in online environments. So it's online and offline and the connection of the two. So as we discussed, you know, there is a connection here. But there's a requirement to make sure that there is safety, that there is high levels of well-being, high levels of psychosocial safety. So, you know, there are scenarios where businesses, if they're not prepared to move first, if they're not prepared to be proactive in circumstances like this, let's say it happened in Australia, there could be serious repercussions from a financial and, like, you know, legal point of view. So it isn't just a nice to have anymore. I think it's gone way beyond that. And I
Absolutely.
guess this is where we need to talk more about first movers in leadership in these organizations.
It-
So, what is it when it comes to these organizations? What do they need to do? Like, what are the steps? And I think that's something that we're really focused on, I guess, as part of the first movers philosophy, is being specific, so that
Yes.
there isn't ambiguity. There isn't sort of a vagueness to what do I do next? Like, what is the blueprint? What would you suggest, Cass, if you were, you know, in the organizations, if you were a brand or a sponsor of the WNBA, if you were someone who's looking to support your players, what should they do?
I would imagine, just, I don't have any, this is not confirmed, but having worked at some really big brands, I would imagine they have in their back pockets crisis comms plans. They will have strategies around audience behavior, around taking care of their players. I would do like you said earlier, and I would, dependent on if their plan is strong enough, which I imagine it is, I would be telling people what is happening and keeping people along to understand the process of the consequences. I know in the States, if they are going to be taking this to any kind of litigation or pressing charges, then there are certain things they can't say. But if that is the case, it is simply saying, this is, you know, this is important enough and for us that we are going to be pressing charges. Therefore, we can't give details, but we are taking this punishment to the highest level that we can. And from here on out, this is a zero-sum game for folks like this. You don't do this basically on our court. And from my perspective in business, the first thing, like I said earlier, is making sure that athletes then know what the process is, because I know there are ways in which processes let athletes down by leaving a lot unspoken and unsaid. So it's understanding those communication touch points, and then it's going out. Like, I love that you mentioned sponsors. So what are the sponsors doing? Are the sponsors there in the background prodding and saying, what is your strategy? What's happening? And if you don't supply us with this and don't come up with something, even if it's a stopgap until you have a better analysis of everything that went on, we're going to pull our funding.
I think that's what you're saying. Like it's all roads lead to the cash, right? The cash is where the power is. And I think this is one of those moments where if you are one of those brands that has has the power, use that power for good, because there's a really simple solution to this. And as you mentioned, totally understand that you can't just share all the details with the general public, but it's also about taking people on the journey. I know that you can't, I mean, of course, organizations can't give away all of the detail and all of the processes that they're going through. There are certainly privacy constraints, but it doesn't mean that that needs to be a barrier to taking people on the journey. So exactly as you shared, articulating, there are some things we can't talk about, but rest assured, we are taking this incredibly seriously. These are our values as a sport. These are our values around our players. This is what we're doing to support them, because in situations like this, it can't be a victim or athlete-led solution. They need to feel supported by their environment. And that's what we talk about a lot as first movers, right? How do we shape the environment? How do we actively shape the environment to be better than it is right now, today? How do we make it better for tomorrow? And so that's where we do come back to that first movers method, like we always do, the acronym for the word FIRST: fuel growth, ignite courage, reframe relationships, shake up the status quo, tell your story. So to make it visible, and this is what we're talking about, right? We don't need to tell all the details, but we need to take people on the journey with us.
That's right. And that's how we understand impact. That's how we do that. And it's how we show that women will not be intimidated out of our spaces. We just won't, but we need first movers, whether it's women, men, allies, whatever it looks like. We need that. We need them. We need to become the people who shape the environments, because if we don't, then we're going to sit back and allow the media and other people and the dude bros with the dildos to do it. So I think we can be a little bolder than some 18 to 23-year-old dildo dude bros.
Absolutely. And I think, it reminds me of that saying in life, and I live and die by this, this comment, in that the world doesn't evolve by those who are just prepared to fit in. It evolves and it gets better by those who are brave enough to stand out, to move first. And I really hope that the people that matter, the decision makers, the influencers, the brands, the league, the most influential players, the allies, I hope they really take that philosophy on, because that's how we really create some good outcomes from a really poor situation.
I love that. And that's how we change. That's change makers. That's how we step off of the sidelines and into the arena. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yaz, for an amazing conversation. I can't wait to see what happens next with this.
I'll be waiting with bated breath. Hopefully no more dildos on courts, Yeah,
just keep those at home. Just keep those at home.
I mean, that's where they're meant to be.
I mean, yeah. So thank you for listening, watching, engaging with us. If you have a topic you'd like Yaz and I to touch on, if you want more information about the First Movers Method, just get in touch with us. Slide on into our DMs. We're okay with that.
Yeah, we love it. We're those people. We love the ones that are going to be brave enough to get in touch. So is that you? I hope it is. Get in touch with us.
Thank you, First Movers. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, guys.